very much for coming. So I'm Neil Anderson. This is a startup grind event. We're very lucky to have Jon Steinberg with us. Jon is the COO and President of BuzzFeed, which I'm sure many of you will know very well. So we're going to have around an hour today to kind of talk and have some Q&A. We're very lucky to have ThoughtWorks host us here, so this is the venue that we're at. We've got AK here who will actually give us a few words on ThoughtWorks, and then we'll get into the event.
Okay, thanks Neil.
Thanks for coming.
John, we'll just take like 1 minute.
Oh,
and then we're done, right? Welcome. I hope you guys enjoyed the beer and the beverages and the food. I don't know. Yes? Okay. A lot of people ask me, what do you do? What is this company all about? We are a company who makes awesome software. So if you have recently flown Delta, Southwest Airlines, used Expedia or AT&T, you have probably used our software in some way or fashion. If you watch Democracy Now!, you have probably watched us in action. So we do custom software development. Recently in January, we were ranked as the most difficult place to get into by Business Insider, based on some Glassdoor rankings. So Google was second, Amazon was third, but that's not true. You can get in. We are hiring. We need awesome developers, awesome business analysts, awesome testers, awesome project managers. So that's the pitch. We are here. We are across the globe in 28 cities, roughly 16 countries, 2,400 people, $250 to $300 million revenue. That's it. Welcome home.
Okay. Jon, tell us what your experience was of trying to hire a bike today. Were you trying to use the city bike?
I was very excited about the city bike, and the first place I went to, it was shut down.
Right.
One across my office, and then I went to another one. I had my key into 5 different ones. I got an error message. So I don't know if I demagnetized it, if possible. But I'm really hoping that I tweeted them, and I'm really hoping they fix it so that I can bike from here up to 59 and then get off and walk the last 10 blocks.
Okay, so you didn't actually manage to get the bike?
I didn't get it. Yesterday it worked.
Get it?
Yesterday it worked, and then today it didn't work.
How long has it been up? Because I missed this. I mean,
No, not Monday.
Just on Monday?
Yeah.
Wow. Has anyone else used it? Successfully? No.
No. I'm a huge geek. I have to have everything first, so this is it.
I guess it's a cyclical product. You let it touch your metro.
Cyclical in what way? Oh.
How many of you have actually been at a startup grind event before? This year. Okay, great. I guess one of the things that we try and do at these events are really just trying to get a perspective on startups in New York that have obviously got traction and are doing really well, and to really get an insider and an insider founder corporate development view on really how to scale these companies and how that really works in terms of dynamics. So again, we're really happy that Jon's agreed to do it, because I think it's certainly demonstrated as one company in New York that has grown really rapidly. I think probably a little older than most people suspect. I mean, does anyone have an idea as to how old BuzzFeed actually is? Very good.
I just guessed.
I think that's right.
That's right. 6 years,
Very good. I mean, I think that's probably, I think if I hadn't researched it, I would have thought maybe 3 or 4 years. But yeah, 2006. There are a couple of things that, I mean, you've done a lot in your time as a professional. I wanted to ask you, before you got to BuzzFeed, so Jon's been at BuzzFeed since 2010?
My 3-year anniversary is June 1st.
Okay. Tell us a bit about how a 16-year-old actually gets into Disney Imagineering.
So I used to read Scientific American when I was 15 and 16. I really liked Scientific American. I didn't understand it all, but I liked it.
Okay.
And there was this ad in it that said, we're looking for Imagineers. And there was like this fold out thing. And my dream in life had always been, as a little kid, to be a Disney Imagineer. That was always what I wanted to do.
Okay.
And you had to dial up with a bulletin board system and fill out this personality survey, and then you had to submit a resume. And I filled out the personality survey. It was questions like, how many hours a night do you sleep? Given a choice between X and Y, what would you choose? And then I wrote an essay on ideas that I had for theme park attraction. And I talked about a couple summer jobs that I had, but I didn't submit a resume because a resume would have been ridiculous for a 15-year-old. And I got a phone call one day, and this guy said, is Jonathan there? I said, yes. He said, this is Dave Fink, and I'm the Vice President of Research and Development at Disney Imagineering.
So you got a call back?
I got a phone call, yeah. And he said, are you really in high school? Are you really a kid? So some people don't believe that. And I said, yeah. I said, I'm really a kid. And he said, all right, well, look, give me your father's phone number. And this was July, and I had like a retail job at that point. I can't remember if I was scooping ice cream or selling Patagonias. It was like one of the two. And because those were two of my summer jobs.
So it wasn't literally your first job at that point, is it?
No, I did like a counselor training, like all those kind of jobs.
Okay.
And he said, give me your father's phone number at work. This is like pre-cell phones. But he called my dad up, and my dad called me up about 10 minutes later, and he said, this guy just called me from Disney, and I don't even know what you filled out or what you did, but we're all flying out to California. Me, you, and your mother are flying out to California.
Wow.
In like a week. And we went out there, and I went to Imagineering, and I met with the R&D team, and I had like an interview with like 10 people in a room just talking about ideas and questions. Imagineering was an extraordinary place. And
Did you find that intimidating?
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple questions that caught me off guard that I got wrong. Like one was, if you're sitting in a raft holding a bowling ball, I always remember this, and you throw the bowling ball overboard, what happens to your raft? You don't have this. Does anyone know? What's that? No, it stays the same for some reason. It stays the same.
It doesn't tilt.
I got that wrong. And I had this internship, and then for about through college, I would go out there on vacations. I would work on little projects from home. I mean, nothing glamorous, like little. But I got exposed to Silicon Graphics machines. I got to go to SIGGRAPH, which was this big computer graphics conference. I got to learn Unix a little bit, which was cool.
So did you relocate to the West Coast for a while?
No, I went out there for summers, and I had to stay with college interns when I was 15. I had no car,
Sure.
which it was actually pretty isolating. I mean, I would go to work, I would go to my thing, and I would kind of be like stuck in this like corporate housing complex on the weekends. I was totally miserable about that part, but I really liked the job, and I built these relationships. One guy was the head of creative and R&D. His name was Trevor Bryant, and to this day, Trevor is one of my mentors and friends. Trevor's, let's see, I'm 36. Trevor must be almost 60. He was the groomsman at my wedding. It's a very kind of odd relationship given the age disparity, but we're still close.
Why do you think they took you?
I think that there was a novelty to it. I think it was a novelty, and it was very exciting for R&D to be able to say that they identified this kid that had ideas for attractions and could do this stuff. So I think it was partly, in all candor, I think it was partly internal marketing for them to be able to say that they did this survey thing. This kid, I was told that I scored high on it. It was a personality test. It wasn't an intelligence test. I don't know. Looking back on it, I don't know if that was true or not. But I think they did it partly as marketing and partly because they thought it would be interesting to have an intern, a kid who could do stuff, who had ideas, and it was nice.
What did you think you wanted to be, sort of at that point, or what was going through your mind in terms of a successful application? And did you think you were going to go into special effects? Did you think you were going to have a creative career? Do you think you were going to go into coding? What sort of trajectory did you think you were going to have at that point?
I thought that I would go into software development. I thought I would. Okay. And I liked the idea. I knew that I wasn't as creative as the creative people. I knew that I couldn't sketch or draw. And that was such an integral part of Imagineering. Even at that point, even though a lot of it was done on computers, everybody who was creative could draw to some
They were
extent.
draftsmen.
Yeah, I mean, whether it was on a Wacom tablet or something like that, that was a skill set that I didn't have. And I knew that the show designers, the people who came up with the attractions, had a skill set that I didn't have. And I didn't really know I remember not knowing what people in business did. People who were business people, not really understanding how they spent their day. Like when they sat at their desk, what did they do if they weren't doing code or they weren't drawing? So I figured, okay, well, I'll code. And it was just, software was just incredibly hard for me. I mean, I basically couldn't figure it out.
And this was before, Jobs set up Next, wasn't it?
Before
Steve Jobs left Apple and went to Next.
Well, so this would have been, there were Next computers already at that point. So this would have been 90, I graduated high school in 95. So this would have been like 92, 93.
Okay.
So there were Next in 92, 93.
Okay.
But mostly it was Sun Spark stations, and Silicon Graphics was just so dominant at that point. And I got to go on a meeting at Silicon Graphics. What was amazing was when I got hired by Google, which would have been, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago when I went to Google.
Yeah.
And I pulled up at the Mountain View campus for the first time, having been hired into New York. Actually, I went up there for interviews, okay? And I was like, why do these buildings look so familiar? When have I been here? And I was like, holy shit, this is the old Silicon Graphics campus.
Yeah.
And what struck me was, when I was 15 or 16, Silicon Graphics was so powerful and so hot and so dominant, and Jim Clark was running it, that to now think that their office space was just taken up by Google, it really struck me at that time, like, wow, nothing is forever, anything can be lost.
Because he was larger than life at that point.
The company was larger than life. To go to SIGGRAPH, which was a special computer graphics in that day. This was right when Jurassic Park had come out.
Yeah.
I love talking about this stuff. So I mean, I never get to talk about this stuff anymore. All I talk about is BuzzFeed now. Jurassic Park had just come out, and that computers could do what was in Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
So that was really, Silicon Graphics was like what we think of as Google or Apple all bundled into one today.
Yeah. You also had a really formidable experience. So you did that, went to college, did undergrad, and then you had another formative experience after college with a local businessman here. So, and that guy was also a mentor and was also doing really interesting things in New York. So this is Jon Steinberg, who Jerry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Who is what one would call a property magnate.
Yeah, real estate developer, manager, owner. Yeah. He owns, he owns Rockefeller Center, Chrysler Building, properties, Berlin, China, all over the world now. I don't know how many square feet. It must be.
So tell us two things related to that. One is that, again, you have an incredible platform in terms of dealing with someone who's doing really interesting things in a particular sector, in a particular geography here in real estate. And secondly, it's a kind of an important inflection point in terms of your own personal and professional growth, because you were doing that, and then you decided to go to business school. So tell us a little bit about how that influenced your thinking afterwards.
So at this point, the entire R&D group had picked up from Disney and gone to Sony. Literally like 40 people, 50 people got hired to go to Sony to build this thing called Metreon in San Francisco, which was going to be an urban entertainment center. Sony wanted to go into this stuff at the time. So they basically hired away the R&D team from Disney. So they went there, and I went with that team there, and I got to do summer stuff for them again. Okay. Tishman Speyer was developing the Sony Center in Berlin. Okay. And Trevor, who's my mentor, said, you should go work for Tishman Speyer. You want to learn business. This is a good place for you to go and learn business. So I went there. I had a summer job doing like analyst work, spreadsheets and stuff on proproperties.
That Sony building in Berlin is pretty iconic, actually. I've seen that.
Right, and there's like, I'd never seen it. I just knew about it.
It's beautiful.
And in my spare time, I had all these ideas for putting telepresence conferencing in the lobbies and screens in elevators and fiber in buildings. I had all these ideas. I wrote these memos. I gave them to my guy who was my direct manager at that point, who was actually a great guy. He didn't read any of them. He wasn't interested. I got to meet Jerry because Jerry came to see this 3D conferencing setup that Cisco or somebody had made that I wanted to put into the building lobbies and lease out to tenants. And
it's called iTenant.
No, this was just that. iBuilding was the company we
iBuilding, right.
But so in the middle of the summer, I did my summer internship. 2 weeks before I went back to college, I got a phone call from Jerry's assistant. Said Jerry wants to meet with you. I had very little one-on-one contact with Jerry. He came in. He said, "What are you going to do after college?" I said, "I think I want to go do TMT banking at Goldman Sachs because that's what everybody in college was doing. I didn't really know there was anything else to do." He said, I remember he said, "I think that's a good idea, but I don't think that's a great idea." And I said, "Okay, what would be a great idea?" He said, "A great idea would be you come work here and you start a company." And I said, "Okay, that sounds great. I think I'll do that." I decided on the spot I would do that. So
that's cool.
I spent the summer kind of working and emailing with him. I came in there. I was given an office, and then that's when I came up with the idea for iBuilding, which was a commercial real estate management platform. Okay. We raised a lot of funding for it. Millions of dollars to build software that never really worked, which was kind of a classic thing of those days, And
that was enterprise software.
Yeah, it's enterprise. And, it never really worked when the company went out of business. And
it wasn't venture funded?
It was. It was Benchmark Capital and 12 Entrepreneuring, which was this thing started by Halsey Minor and Eric Greenberg. Okay. I put money into it. And it just didn't work. We couldn't get the real estate owners to adopt it. They formed consortiums to evaluate software, and they asked for equity in exchange for which software they would use. It became a very complicated market.
Did you feel that that was like your kind of formative founder or entrepreneur sort of experience? I mean, did you feel it? Did it feel like that, or did it feel like a business gig?
No, it never felt like a business gig, but it never felt like it was mine. And people, I had gone from a point where everybody thought that it was ridiculous, and it was never going to be successful, and that I was wasting the company's time and wasting Jerry's time, because it wasn't really wasting money, because very little Tishman's money went into it, to suddenly everybody loved me, and people came in and took control of it. And then, as quickly as that happened, when it started going badly, everybody abandoned me again. So that was sort of an interesting experience to have.
So the whole
yeah, and that was, very quick. I felt like I wish I had more control over it. If I had more control over it, maybe I could have fixed some of these things.
More control or more experience?
Both. But also, there were things that even then that intuitively made sense to me. This is kind of one of the things that I've talked about a lot. I think there's all this sort of intuition around strategy that you have to kind of get just from yourself, and it's part of like your just life experience, even as a young person. And then there's tactical, operational stuff, which you really can just learn by smart people just telling you. I think I had instincts even then, I'll give myself credit for, without even having the operational experience. And then Jerry said, "What do you want to do? You want to come work for me and be my chief of staff?" Which is the idea of like a young person who works for a senior person, basically doing their memos, keeping track of it, like a sort of like a
special assistant.
Special assistant, right? Or do you want to go back to business school? And one of the worst mistakes ever, I went back to business school because I didn't think I loved real estate. And what I didn't realize at the time was how much more valuable it would have been for me to spend that time with him and to do that and learn that industry and get more mentorship from him, because the little time I spent with him proved so much more valuable. And business school is such a waste of time and money.
Do you still feel that?
I feel it so strongly. So strongly. It's a racket.
Do you think that business schools could do more, or do you think that actually business schools as a function basically don't do what they set out to do?
I think that, I keep it on tape, I'll say this. I feel like Columbia, it was so finance oriented, right? And when the financial collapse happened and all these firms, there either weren't jobs or jobs were rescinded, they were kind of like, how did this happen to us? I'm like, how did this happen to us? You had been directing entire classes of people in finance year after year after year. So there was that problem. I found accounting that I learned in business school incredibly valuable. Accounting, but you could learn that from a text.
You could be a CPA rather than an MBA.
Right, yeah. Or maybe law school, I wish I had done that because I find reading contracts to be so important. Yes. But I just don't think, I think it's too expensive for what it is, and it's too time consuming for what it is. When basically it's tactical stuff that if you read Chris Dixon's blog and you read a bunch of management books and you saw someone like Bill Campbell speak, when I think of the things I learned from Bill Campbell speaking, or even Jack Dorsey speaking, like
Bill Campbell?
Bill Campbell he's known as coach in the Valley. He sat on the board of Apple and he sat on the board of Google. He still sits on one or more of the boards. He was
So he's one of the legendary kind of Silicon Valley investors.
Yeah, and he's just...
Before Ron Conway.
And Ron here very close, right, yeah.
Okay.
He was the CEO of Intuit.
Okay.
And I mean, every time I see this guy speak, and I've never benefited from having him be able to directly mentor me, every time he speaks, there's nuggets.
Yeah, there's real stuff coming out of that.
I mean, he said to me one of the things, only 6 or 7 months ago I heard him speak, and he said, when dealing with people, you want to be kind and direct.
Yes.
And I think that to me is that is how you have to deal with people in a company, be kind and direct. Put yourself in their shoes, feel empathetic, but don't allow that kindness and empathy to tell people things that aren't true, because that's the opposite of kindness.
Sure. Do you hire MBAs?
I said this to someone the other day, I don't really know where anybody who works for us went to college, or if they have MBAs or not. I mean, I do see it when they come in, but if you ask me who in the company has an MBA, I don't even know the answer. And I just as quickly forget where they went to school. I think that I think we were part of the last generation where you went to college really mattered. And
really?
I think it's progressively mattered less. So I think if you went to an Ivy League school 20 years ago, it probably guaranteed you something in life. And I feel like it's become progressively less and less and less. And I think about my own children, and if my children are desperate to go to college, I want to do that for them. It wouldn't be my first choice for either of my children to go to college.
Sure. I mean, you also had a really interesting experience, and it's probably one of the reasons why I wanted you to share about getting into Disney Imagineering, is that there are some people that if they get that kind of break and then actually sort of go back to their parents and say, you know what, I'm actually not even going to do college, let alone actually be school, that now there seems to be more of a context for actually people doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, without the teal 20 under 20, I mean,
Right.
you know, forget that for a moment, but actually just say, in general, if you get those sort of breaks to actually do really kind of good work at a very early stage without formal
Yeah,
schooling.
and they said that, and Dave Fink at Imagineering said to me, maybe you don't want to come to college, maybe you just want to come and work here, right? And I remember having the conversation with my mother, and she thought at first, she was like, oh no, I think you have to go to college. And then she said, well, maybe it's not the worst idea, maybe you should do this. And I think there hadn't been enough examples, and I didn't have the courage to do that because I had gone through such kind of an institutional upbringing in New York. You know, having gone to a prep school where everybody went to college, having never seen anybody that graduated high school and went and did anything other than going to college.
Yeah.
And having it still at that time be something that just you had to do.
Yes.
The world is so much broader now in terms of things you can do.
And I think it's probably different though if, I mean, it's one thing actually kind of going for a large established brand name and signing up early as an alternative to schooling, as opposed to actually saying, you know, it's sort of 17, 18, I'm actually going to start, you know, do a startup.
Right, or even I'm just going to go work somewhere. I mean, or I'm going to just, you know, but like you said, when presented with, I mean, that's really the one thing that I've learned is that when presented with these opportunities, as I've gotten older, I've been really good at seeing an opportunity and just grabbing it without even hesitating, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is that I think there were some missed opportunities when I was younger, but you know, you get to where you get based on what you've been through.
So you joined BuzzFeed when it was 15 people.
Mm-hmm.
It's now 260.
Yep.
We were talking about it just now, that it's kind of really in stage 5 in terms of the company's evolution, because it was incubated really at HuffPo when Jonah Peretti was still there, and then it was essentially spun off, and it's gone through A, B, C, and D rounds. So the company's actually gone through various stages, and you've seen it from what, Series B?
Right. So I joined right after the Series B, which RRE led.
And they followed on with every subsequent round.
That's right, yeah. Every one of our investors has been in every round. And you have the new leads because that's just part of it, but actually NEA led our past 2 rounds. NEA led our C and our D.
Tell us a little bit about 2 things there. One is, what's it like being part of this rapidly growing company? And secondly, what is it like actually working pretty closely with venture capitalists?
I think that it's been.
If that be the case,
yeah, no, I think that it's amazing how much you have to change, and there's points in time where you're not sure if you're going to be able to change to cross these chasms, and nothing is guaranteed. And for me, it meant it meant dealing with so much volume of things, and just kind of getting to a level of kind of like if that's a word, right? Just where you're just so used to just so much complexity and
Yeah.
so many hassles and so much stress every day
Yeah.
that you've developed systems for dealing with it. And I think that there is probably a point.
Is this kind of chaos and stability happening at the same time, or is it actually sort of levels of chaos and levels of stability?
Chaos, I mean, I actually think that we're actually pretty well organized. Not chaos is the wrong word. It's just that in any given day, there's an advertiser who's upset about an article that's written on the site. There's team dynamic issues that are going on. There's employment issues. I mean, there's all sorts of things, and then there's just, and as you have to keep on figuring out ways to kind of go on to the next thing, fire yourself from the existing role, up your game, because if you don't up your game, you're not going to be there, right?
So can venture financing actually be a stabilizing influence in that respect? I
don't think capital raising for venture capital is terribly interesting, or when I think about the stuff.
I mean, when I think about it, the Series D, you didn't actually really need the money, because actually BuzzFeed is very cash generative.
Right.
So,
right.
So in that sense, it's kind of interesting.
Right. As I was saying to you backstage, I think it's so binary. I mean, what I see, it's raising a seed round is relatively easy.
Okay.
I mean, relatively speaking, and then everything after that is pretty binary. If you're putting up good numbers and you're doing well, it's relatively easy to raise more capital.
Okay.
If you're not, it's incredibly difficult. And I think that there's a spectrum, and basically the spectrum is it's a line that goes like this. And on one axis you have revenue and earnings, and on the other axis you have usage, defined by unique users or subscribers or whatever. And basically, if you have no revenue,
you've got a balance between them.
You get a balance, right? Or if you have no revenue and you have such massive growth in users like Instagram, you're fine. And if you have no users, but you print money, you're fine. And otherwise, you're somewhere on the spectrum. And if you're on that line, you're okay.
Okay. And where are you on the spectrum? Or on the axes?
You know, I think we're doing quite well. I mean, you know, this traffic is enormous at this point. You know, we have, I don't know which number we've disclosed, but we have 60 million monthly unique visitors to the site. When I joined, I think we were at 6 million.
You think you're at a fair balance, basically, between the two?
Yeah, I think that being a New York media company, we're probably more in the revenue. We probably have more of a balance between being like a real business than a lot of what you find in Silicon Valley, right? I think that
Do you think that's a New York thing?
I think it is a New York thing. Yeah, I think that when you look at a company like, you know, when you look at like a Buddy Media or, I mean, Tumblr is sort of an exception, right? Tumblr being more of a West Coast kind of company that's in New York, but I think there's a lot of, I think there's a New York orientation.
Is there a feeling that that it will go the Buddy Media route?
Oh, BuzzFeed?
Yeah.
No, I don't think we think about that. I mean, you know, it becomes cliche to say you really don't think about that, but ultimately, I think when you're in this, you're so committed to it, it becomes like your child that you want to build, you know, and you see that you can keep up-leveling and growing a bigger and bigger company, and you can change things. I mean, when I look back at the fact that we were the world's, you know, leading cat site, you know, 3 years ago, and then today we've got some of the best politics, technology, business coverage, and it seems so easy for us to, easy to come into this stuff and easy to lose it. It can go both ways, right? That, I mean, I think BuzzFeed could be the next New York Times. I think BuzzFeed could be the next Condé Nast. I think BuzzFeed could be the next Hearst. And you know, when you put so much of yourself into that, why wouldn't you want to kind of
see it through?
See it through.
So is there a kind of discrepancy there then between what people think that BuzzFeed is and what BuzzFeed actually is? You know, take a poll. What do people think that BuzzFeed really does? Give me, you know, two people with hands up. What does BuzzFeed do?
Feels they create content right from the start of wanting it to be maximally viral. They succeed all.
One more? Or two more? Go ahead.
I immediately associate it with Facebook because that's when I'm constantly discovering BuzzFeed article from friends, sharing, really collaborative, entertaining.
You have one.
A little news aggregation.
All right, one more.
I have to say that I was shocked just recently with some real big mainstream media companies. Like I'm reading MSNBC.com, and I see them referencing BuzzFeed.
Right.
BuzzFeed reports. And that's been a new thing. I was very impressed with that uptake.
Okay, all right, two more.
I like this. It's good.
Let's go. Yeah.
I just have to mention the day that the Boston terrorism story broke and when it resolved itself. That was a moment that I don't know how to describe it, but I was watching that feed.
Did it feel like that internally?
Yes, it did. It did. And actually, you know, Ken Lair, our chairman, said to us, first of all, we noticed an enormous front page traffic spike when that happened, which meant that for 18 to 34-year-olds, BuzzFeed is their news source.
Yeah.
And that's our audience. It's 60% of our audience. We're 50% mobile. You know, this is a cohort that's never going to subscribe to a newspaper. Newspapers have sections which I think are kind of like somewhat offensive to young people. They don't watch television. So, you know, where were they going for news? And that means that in addition to providing their lighthearted entertainment content, we now have a commitment to be a source of breaking news. So Ken said, you guys have to hire more breaking news. You have to hire, and then we hired Lisa Tizzy from the New York Times to come in and lead up our breaking news. We're going to hire, you know, somewhere between 7 and 11 breaking news reporters.
That's really interesting because so it was kind of like the recognition that you've got the engagement, you've got a very specific demographic, and then you realize that actually with that actually comes some sort of responsibility, if you like, to then actually sort of broaden the offering to that demographic.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that, like, you know, that's like an opportunity, and it's you know, it's an opportunity, and it's something where your user base just tells you what you have to do. You know, when young people say, I get my news from BuzzFeed, that means that we have a lot of opportunity in that to kind of fulfill. And if you don't fulfill that, right, they start coming to BuzzFeed and we don't have that stuff, then you have the potential to let them down. We actually don't do news aggregation. We do all original reporting, and we actually have a tracking system. We launched something today called Fresh, which is FRE.sh. We have our tracking code and our analytics we provide to a host of publishers like Time, Daily Mail, Huffington Post, and we trigger their most viral stuff into areas of our front page. And now on Fresh, we directly link to them. So we don't rewrite their stories.
Right.
You click on a link, you go right to their page.
And you just signed a deal with CNN, which looks pretty strategic. So
Yeah.
tell us a bit about that.
The thing with CNN is really amazing. I mean, the opportunity there is that we do not have film crews all over the world, and they do, and they're incredibly good at gathering news, and they're incredibly good at running an amazing television network and website. And our strength is figuring out ways that young people want to consume media. Whether that's hard-hitting news or lighthearted fare. And we also love YouTube. We think YouTube's another social network, and we'll do 70 million views on YouTube this month. We only started our effort with Zay Frank on YouTube 8 months ago with 1 million subscribers. I mean, it's kind of record time to get to that. So was
it helpful to work with Google beforehand? Not really.
Helpful to work with them on what?
I mean, you worked at Google before.
Oh, was it helpful? Yes, I actually think it was. I think it was because I understood. When we were partnering with YouTube, I understood how Google thinks about things, and I understand, what they need. I've been on their side of the table.
Yes.
I actually think YouTube is one of the best operated startups today. I mean, they're definitely my favorite partner.
They're easier to partner with?
Yeah, they're very easy to partner with, and I think that when you look at the leadership there, whether it's like Robert Kinsel or Jed Simons or Lee Milson or all the guys that we work with there, they realize that they're the cable network. I mean, YouTube is effectively the Comcast, Time Warner, and everything rolled into one.
Right now.
They did 1 billion. They had 1 billion people access YouTube last month. That's 15% of the world's population. We get 50% of our YouTube views, sometimes 60 or 70% of our YouTube views on mobile.
Wow.
I mean, that's just baffling behavior to me. What's exciting for me is this is the first time in my life where there are people younger than me that have behavior that I don't totally understand. And I think what that makes me realize is, oh my God, I better figure this out, because I don't want to be somebody that doesn't get something. And that's really the mobile YouTube consumption. I very rarely watch YouTube on my mobile phone, but everybody does apparently.
I do.
How many people here watch YouTube on their phone? That's insane.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. That's impressive.
How many people? IMAX if you hold it close.
It's like, oh God. How many of you guys are on Android? How many on iPhone?
How many both? That's one person with 2 hands.
Do you work at Pivotal, or where do you work? Oh, you had some Pivotal Labs or something. Oh, no,
Yeah, okay. Cool. You mentioned syndication of content. Do people partner? Are there people out there in the social media startup ecosystem that want to partner with BuzzFeed? And if they do, how would they do that?
Who has has a site with a certain level of traffic, we will give you free analytics, and we will trigger your most viral content into areas of BuzzFeed. So
it is possible.
It is possible. The other way it's possible to partner with us is, the CNN deal is a much bigger deal, and it's a joint channel, and it's a much closer collaboration. We have more lightweight versions of that with BBC for animal footage. And how many of you have seen the Zay Frank, the True Facts series? True Facts about the naked mole rat. True Facts about, some people have seen that stuff. So a lot of that content is coming from BBC's, I think it's called Blue Planet or Planet Blue or something like that.
And we did stuff.
Yeah, we did one with CNBC where we got some of their footage to do a montage about the 1-year anniversary of Facebook. And I think we want to do a lot more of these deals. I mean, any network that has great content that they want BuzzFeed to remix on YouTube, give attribution, and link out to the original source material, we found that to be a very effective model. And it doesn't cannibalize, because if you're people like House Hunters or something like that, people 18 to 34 are not, by and large, watching these programs on television. It's a totally different audience that you can access through YouTube.
When I saw the announcement, one of the things that I was thinking about was kind of Time Warner AOL, but that was a merger, and it was, I'm sure you remember that well.
Yeah.
That was a huge deal. It didn't really work out that well. This seems to be a much more sensible kind of partnership? I mean, obviously it's not an acquisition, it's a partnership, but where do you see it going?
I think what's interesting is we have been very slow to do partnerships in business development. We do almost none of it. We don't really even have anyone with us who works in business development.
Okay.
And when we saw when partnerships work, when there's a really obvious allocation of resources, when it's almost like trade, right?
Yes.
And that's effectively what this is. So we took a long time to do it. This is the right fit for it. Where do I see it going? I mean, we want to immediately get, the CNN stuff to doing 2 to 3 videos a week. We think of it that way because a lot of people think about tonnage of content on YouTube. We think about every video needs to get hundreds of thousands of views, and the ones that are breakout hits should get millions of views, right? We think about it like releasing episodes of House of Cards as opposed to just like dumping tonnage on the channel, because people basically on YouTube do not want to watch talking heads. It's a totally different format. So I think that we want to be judicious in terms of the volume, but look for other opportunities like this.
One person mentioned Boston. I think of the White House press correspondents' dinner. So what was kind of the feeling when you got name-checked at that point by the president?
So Ben is such a force in politics that we knew during the campaign that the president and his team were looking at the site. And we had a lot of stories that were definitely scoops. And that's our whole philosophy on our reporting, is we do scoops because people share scoops, right? They don't share compendiums or regurgitations.
Okay.
When the president mentioned it, it was totally shocking. It was totally shocking. And my mother...
Did you get another spike?
No, TV doesn't drive anything.
Okay.
TV doesn't drive anything. I mean, even the president saying your name on TV does nothing.
Seriously?
Yeah, nothing.
That's incredible.
Pretty definitive.
But you know this as well, or you're just saying I'm definitive? Yeah.
There's people trying to sell it.
So
what was your mom's reaction?
she texted me. We threw a party at the White House Correspondents'. We threw a counter-program party because we were excluded from the White House Correspondents' dinner because one of our reporters had some issue with the head of the White House Correspondents Association,
Okay.
and there was some problem with our table.
So it wasn't BuzzFeed, it was actually personal.
Oh, it was totally personal. So we were excluded from the dinner. So we threw this awesome party at a bar and got the whole cast of House of Cards to come and everything like that. I think next year when we are invited, we'll turn down the tickets just to spite them and do our party again. But it was loud. We had this whole party going on. We had hundreds of people.
Right.
And my mom texted me and said the president just said BuzzFeed. And my mom gets everything wrong. Everything possible. I love my mother. I'm so close, but she gets everything wrong. And I thought to myself, what the president must have said is, there's a buzz in the media today about something, or like something like that was kind of like, or like, when I look at my feed and I see all the buzz, like that. So then I went to Twitter and I twittered POTUS BuzzFeed, and it was just like,
Boom.
yeah, and then Joan had the best, So the president said, I remember the media landscape, and also the precursor to what he said was so perfect too. A lot of people forgot that. That was my favorite part. The media landscape has changed so rapidly. I remember when BuzzFeed was something that I used to do 2 a.m. in the morning.
Right.
So he said this, right? And then Jonah Peretti, my partner, tweets out, at Barack Obama, that's still what BuzzFeed means.
Oh, I didn't see that exchange.
It was good.
Nice. What's it looking like for the rest of the year? What's in the pipeline that you can share?
Yeah, so I think that we're gonna. I mean, the UK launch has been fantastic in terms of traffic and in terms of mind share there, and in terms of our interest from brands. So I think I want to push harder on that. We want to do more foreign coverage. We've already announced that as well. I'm spending a lot of time on YouTube and video right now, so I really want to make sure that Zay is like Zay Frank, who runs that, is staffed properly. I want to get the LA office opened, both from the video production standpoint and also to staff it with the right coverage of the Hollywood market and the entertainment community, which we do. So between that and hiring and staffing, and
have you moved into the new offices again?
no, we'll move in. I think in the fall. And the other thing is we announced this agency training program, which is modeled exactly out for the programs that we did at Google, which is basically an accreditation and training program to help agencies work more closely with us.
Who does that within the organization?
So I want to hire somebody now to lead that up, and we have people who work closely with agencies, and we've got the sales team, and I have marketing people, but it's a bit of kind of an open, I didn't think it was going to be as big of an opportunity as I thought it was. We
But the
launched it.
requirement's there.
What's that?
But the demand is
The
there.
demand is there, and you put these things out sometimes, and you say you're going to do something, and you commit to doing it, and then you see the response, and then you know, okay, well now I know where to, immediately it's so many agencies coming and saying, I want to do this. Agencies want to spend more time with us learning about how to do things on BuzzFeed. We need to do what Facebook does. We need to do what Google does. We need a Facebook garage. We need an authorized AdWords reseller program. We need to scale that up, more.
It's kind of the silver bullet for viral, generating viral content.
Yeah.
And you've got the finger on the pulse, you know how to do it.
But to
They
answer your
need to know.
question, I put this on LinkedIn the other day, is I think there is this over-calibration towards big strategic thinking and not enough focus on tactical, week in, week out execution. And yes, I have strategic thoughts. Yes, we've done strategic things that have shaped the business over time, but that's the stuff that comes to you when, you're out, in the park with your kids or you're showering. All the ideas do come to you when you're in the shower, right? But it's the tactical execution day out. And so I think to myself, hitting traffic numbers, hitting revenue numbers, hitting hiring goals.
Because the black swan may never come.
Because the what?
The black swan may never come.
Right, and also, I mean, it's just like, I think it's Edison. It's like, what is it? Or some of it, strategy without execution is hallucination. Like, I mean, that's really.
Yes.
And when I look back, I'm like, I just wish that I had more people. I feel like I could have saved time in this whole journey if I had more people mentoring me on the tactical.
I was talking to someone about this today, that he's doing an education startup, and there are some education startups with a ton of money, Blackboard, etc.
Yeah.
And I basically said that at this point, you've basically got to go out and still do it, and you've got to build with awareness without fear. That you've still got to have the awareness of kind of knowing what the landscape is, has out there, but you've still got to go ahead and do it on the basis of the fact that they may or may not actually come straight into your space and basically dominate or take you up. So how do you, so kind of building but without being in the rear view mirror, who do you see as your competition?
I really don't. I mean, I guess you have to give an answer to that, because otherwise it seems like you're not being candid. But I mean, I guess the New York Times is probably our competition. But it's such a different thing. Very few businesses are really competed out of business. I think it's very hard to find examples of that, right?
Right.
Most people fail through execution or don't adapt or don't evolve.
Actually, interestingly, I wouldn't say my old boss, but we were talking backstage. I started off at the BBC, but actually Mark Thompson was ex-director general of the BBC after my time, and is now, I think, leader of the New York Times.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting, but I don't know what he's going to be doing there. I haven't looked at it closely.
I mean, anyone who decides that they want to, go into news and branded content, geared at people in their 20s and 30s is competition to some extent.
Okay.
But for us, we just have to execute, and if anything, how quickly everything has happened for us. I just realize every day that we can do this, somebody else can do this to us, and that doesn't make me think about them.
Yeah.
It makes me think more about us, when things take longer than they should, when I see us get bogged down in bureaucracy, when I see groups not communicating, when I see us have a snafu where we agree to something in the document we shouldn't have agreed to. I mean, minor stuff, but those things are like, wow, we got to get ourselves together.
Give me an idea on so if not maybe overt competition, but on the buy side and sell side of branded content, who are give me 2 or 3 that you think get it. Clients who really get it and they really know how to engage and they know what they want. Providers such as yourselves who actually really know how to give it for them.
So the best people at it, I mean, Virgin Mobile and Ron Farris stand out by such,
The second one?
Ron Farris is his name. He's the head of brand marketing for Virgin Mobile.
Got it.
And the velocity with which they're able to put out content that speaks to their brand values and kind of cultivates an audience is really excellent. And GE is amazing as well too, and we work very closely with them. So, and we've done measurements for them to show how much this works. So they're good research partners. They're able to put out content in an agile way.
Is that because Beth Comstock has a media background?
And it's a leadership thing. I mean, it's like it comes from Beth down that we have 3 people at GE, and really 1 or 2 people that can sign off on everything that they do with us.
Yes.
But we'll work with a small packaged goods company that has 40 people that want to approve and have issues with everything, right? So it really isn't an organizational size thing, it's a mentality, and that's a leadership thing, and it's a marketing leadership thing. I think when you look at Coca-Cola, you look at Wendy Clark, I mean, that's another CMO which kind of has a set of metrics that she's focused on and wants to be agile and move stuff out the door. So I think that that's very much a leadership thing coming from the CMO suite.
And on your side of the table?
On our side of the table, who's doing branded content really well? I think YouTube and the TrueView format and the way that Google is reaching out to brands now to work with them and support them in video. I think TrueView is Google's second great product after AdWords. I think that it's amazing how many people, you've got 5 seconds to capture the attention of somebody with a pre-roll. They either bail or they stay, and it's amazing how many brands stay with it. I mean, create content that's compelling enough to stay past the 5 seconds. So, yeah.
Couple more questions, and then we'll open it up. One is, what do you think of kind of the New York startup ecosystem in general, and sort of aligned to that? I mean, have you invested in any startups yourself privately?
Yeah.
And I guess probably the second question is, what perspective would you offer to kind of entrepreneurs now in the being New York, doing something, leveraging New York strengths, whether it's monetizing the fact that there are industries here? What sort of advice would you have for entrepreneurs here?
So through a group, I've done a couple investments which have not worked out so well. So I'm not so good at that. So I shouldn't probably get that much advice about investing. But I do think that, and I'm actually on the board of one now, which is new, which I'm very excited about, called Shake with RRA, which is a simple legal app on your iPhone. We're kind of still in stealth on it, but you can download it. We haven't really done any PR on it yet. It's a Shake law. You can create simple agreements and do it right from your phone. And I think that speaks to what I'm excited about, which is I think that there's a big opportunity in the consumerization of enterprise technology, of business tools. You and I were talking about this backstage.
Well, professional services is just right for it.
I think that when you look at the tools, when I look at the tools that we use in business, and now even being at 260 employees, we're still on Dropbox. We love Dropbox. We use Google Apps for everything. Everyone, we're a bring your own device organization. So all of these trends, and people want the ease of use in their business productivity tools that they've come to expect in their personal tools. People want Evernote, right?
Sure.
So to me, that's an interesting area. I think it's the photo app that gets to and Chris Dixon had a great post. The new million users is 10 million users, right? And now there's a question of, is 10 million users on a consumer app?
No pressure there.
Right, no pressure there. But you could make a great productivity app or a great enterprise app which gets penetration by people just starting to use it and spreading it through the organization. You could start charging and you can be self-sustaining and you can build a great business that way.
True. Open to the floor. Sure. Yes.
Would you describe BuzzFeed as, and please expand on this, would you describe BuzzFeed as a young person's Drudge Report in some way?
I mean, I would describe BuzzFeed as the media company for the web. And I would say that because most other companies are portovers, and the web right now is by and large social. That's how people get all their news and information. And we're native to that. And I actually think that what's interesting is you typically have people in their 20s and 30s adopt technology. And then I think you have the cohort above them that, especially now, and I think due in large part to the iPad and other technologies like that, that want to be part of culture. And I see it now with people that are in their 40s and 50s whose kids in college are telling them about BuzzFeed. If BuzzFeed has great news and BuzzFeed has great entertainment and their kids are accessing it and they can access that, why wouldn't they want to get that than be part of something that's old and tired and has failed to adapt? So I actually think that we're going through that transition right now. Everyone's on an iPad, everybody's on Facebook, everybody's on the mobile web, and we've created a media company for content to spread that way.
What's the future of the newspaper industry? What advice would you give to newspapers?
So it's interesting, I read a book on the newspaper industry, which is, God, the name's escaping me now, but the newspaper industry has been very entrepreneurial and very much, do you work in a newspaper?
I don't work in newspaper.
And very much about reinvention over the past 100 years. The New York Times was priced at 5 cents, right? And they dropped it to 3 cents. Circulation went through the roof. They used to publish a list of out-of-town merchants in the city to do business, right? In the 70s, when they rolled out other sections like travel and leisure and food, and that was very controversial at the time because it's like, how could the New York Times of hard news be doing these lightweight sections? And now we take for granted as the mainstays, and BuzzFeed having an animal section is the crazy thing, right? So the industry has historically been run by entrepreneurs that are very adaptive. And I think that spirit needs to come back into the companies. I don't know what they do about the unions and the printing presses and printing stuff. That to me, I haven't looked at what the economics are on that, but that can't be, that can't be a good thing for them. They have to figure out a way to get out of that. Even people now who are subscribing to print newspapers, no one in their 20s is ever going to subscribe to a print newspaper. That's obviously going to zero, right?
So do you think you can jump in first and actually just be the native online newspaper before these guys actually really pivot successfully?
I think we have to a certain extent. ComScore has a measure called MMX. It takes into account mobile usage. Their core metrics don't. When you look at that, it's amazing how few there are, that are above us now. I think we're larger than the Washington Post now when you take into account mobile.
If people are getting their news primarily from you, is there any concern about the long-term kind of Twitterization of information? Everything is short, a few hundred words, as opposed to the kind of the longer form things that traditionally got done that expand thought?
So we have a long form section that does quite well, actually. And I think that I always think about, I can't remember if it's King Lear or Henry IV. Who's the one who yells at the rain, yells at the storm?
King Lear.
King Lear, okay. I think that a lot of people in business yell at the storm, right? And I think that's so unproductive, right? People love Twitter and love getting their news from Twitter. People love Facebook and they love getting their news from Facebook. That's just the way the world is. And to me, it's much more exciting to say, how am I going to adapt than to complain about it? So I think we took a stance very early on that we were less concerned about the front page. The Twitter and Facebook were our front page. And if people came to BuzzFeed lots of times during the day through Facebook, that was okay. It would be like, Facebook's like the network, the cable network, and we sit on top of that, So we've always leaned into the way the world is as opposed to complaining about it. So to answer your question, I hope Twitter gets even bigger. I think our business vertical is very much a bet on LinkedIn. I hope LinkedIn explodes in terms of the amount of content that it ingests. People go to LinkedIn today more because so many people are scared of that kind of stuff that if we say we're going to be great at that kind of stuff, I think it creates opportunity.
But do you think that there's equivalence between web, social, and short form?
What do you mean?
To kind of to extend his point that actually, if you're looking at something, let's say that you're on BuzzFeed, you're in the checkout counter.
Yes.
You're literally at the checkout counter.
Mm-hmm.
You've got 2 or 3 minutes that you could be buying gum or buying a magazine that actually you're not going to read, but instead you're actually on BuzzFeed. It satisfies your time for the time that you're actually in the checkout counter. That's different from the time that you would actually allocate to reading a newspaper.
Right, but I think that a lot of articles, when I read longer articles in the traditional press, and again, I'm not editorial, Ben Smith might have a very different view on this.
Okay.
I think the atomization of news, where each piece of the scoop is the item, and people are consuming a river of content throughout the day,
yes.
I like that better. When I get a long article that's a regurgitation of the entire backstory, I don't need the entire backstory. I want up to the date piece thing. I personally read more books than ever. I think a lot of people are reading more books than ever. So I think that news might be meant to be short.
I think consumption is different. If I think of it actually just in terms of food, actually I really do like long form. But think of it in terms of food, that actually you could kind of sit down to 3,000 calories at a plate. Or you could actually eat tapas or sushi or whatever it is. So I think it's actually just a style of consumption which doesn't necessarily relate to quality.
We put the Instapaper buttons and the Read It Later buttons on our long form content.
Because there's a subtext which I think relates to short form equals ADD, also
I agree with that. Right.
Less
I like
quality.
the tapas analogy a lot because tapas can be the most delicious, high-end, high-quality food. It's just a portion controlled
If you can pull it off.
I mean, we see that on YouTube, whereas on YouTube, everybody wants to put up 30-minute long interviews, right? People don't want to watch that. They're really interested in stuff that senators or people say that are breaking pieces of information. But there's so much to consume right now that to have the dead space, we see actually with YouTube, what's interesting is we suspect, because our YouTube viewing is so high during prime time, and that's, we put a special unit on the page at around 6 o'clock at night, which stays there all night, has videos in it.
Okay.
And a lot of people are watching television, or watching on the second screen, and when it gets boring, or they're with their friend or partner or whatever,
Sure.
they watch a couple things on their phone, and it gets a little bit slow,
Right.
during the new.
Could I ask one other thing related to that, though? As you're moving into business journalism, international and news, those are kind of three big sort of movements, beyond memes, if you like, or the animal genre. Is there a kind of an editorial policy that goes with that? At one point, I guess, when I was reading newspapers, I would read the Financial Times and Guardian. And the Guardian was kind of seen as frankly left of center. I don't really know how the delineation works in terms of American media, but if one accepts that there probably is a delineation of American media and for serious news, is that a choice that actually one, BuzzFeed is going to make, and secondly going to be transparent about?
I think that it's amazing how frequently Ben gets attacked from both sides to me, right?
Okay.
And I think that, and we definitely, I know for a fact we've got some writers that are more conservative and some that are more liberal, right? But I don't think that BuzzFeed has a political leaning.
And doesn't need to have
I don't think it needs to have it. I think there's
Okay.
a lot of opinion in a lot of articles, but I think it's pretty broad. I mean, what's interesting, we did this immigration summit that Koch, Charles Koch, sponsored, right?
Yep.
And we had full editorial control over it, and we got attacked from both
Any
sides.
backlash?
No, because
Not much?
it's funny. I think some people thought that we didn't know that it would be controversial. Like, we knew that it would be controversial. We had all the
Right.
controls in place, and
Right.
if you're going to do stuff in Washington, the people that want to be involved with things in Washington are people with policy stuff.
But these are one of the major kind of super PAC brothers, right?
But we did campaigns with the Communication Workers of America, which is a union group. We did CTIA. We've done this stuff before,
Okay.
and we got attacked from both sides. Liberals attacked it that it was too conservative, and the conservatives said that there's too many liberals on the panel. It's just like, and you get attacked from both sides, you're doing the right thing, I think.
Quite.
Yeah. Right.
I'm wondering about the future or the present in terms of investigative journalism. I don't think that there's as much of that as there was 40 years ago or even 20 years ago. Especially given the short form, the prevalence of short form journalism. What do you think the future is of investigative journalism? Just by the feed, pay reporters to do lots of research and really get to the bottom of things, or is it more just great content?
I mean, I think when you look at the article that Ben or some other team did recently on General Petraeus, right, on his return, or I think when you look at what Rosie Gray did about veterans not getting their benefits. I mean, I think we've had numerous stories, and we have over 90 reporters on staff right now. So I think that we've done a very solid job of that kind of stuff. I also think that investigative journalism has changed a bit right now because things are public so fast, because there's so many people that can tweet something out or post something or draw attention to something. So I think we're in a more transparent society than ever more. You can't even, the kind of cover-ups that went on 20 years ago, you can't imagine any of that stuff really going on today. At least I can't. So.
But it sounds like the business model internally supports a larger in-house reporting team. I mean, maybe is that a distinction between maybe HuffPo and BuzzFeed in that sense?
HuffPo had a large reporting team too. I mean,
okay.
I think for us that was very contrarian for us to hire reporters and invest in journalism.
Okay.
And again, that's not what Silicon Valley wants to hear. Silicon Valley wants to hear you've got some machine in the corner that just does. But
It's
people,
crunching it up,
but people don't want to read that stuff. And people don't want to show stuff. And you
Right.
need great writing, and you need across the spectrum. What's interesting is when you watch, NBC, the proportion of stuff which is news relative to sitcoms, probably, I don't know, a few percentages maybe. And I think that's the distribution of content that people want. I mean, life is really tough, and I think people can only handle so much negative stuff, and you need to show that. So people also want a lot of light, fair, and entertainment. I think that, if anything, our distribution of hard content relative to light content is probably much more than most.
Okay, two more questions. Yeah. Behind, yes, sorry. Yes.
I got two questions. I'm not sure if you want to do that, but one's really easy and one's really hard. So
All right.
I'm moving on. The easy one is just because I'm going into building a startup, I'm wondering how important it is to build a company culture and like how you tackle that. And the hard question is, after television became mainstream, more people began to own it, our politics really changed up. Like you saw the people who heard Nixon getting debate on the radio thought Nixon won. And we saw on TV thought Kennedy won. And it's time verification started to happen to our politics. What do you think is going to happen to our politics in the future now that we're consuming most of our media for television?
It's funny, your first question, neither of those questions are easy, short questions. Those are super hard questions.
Did everyone hear both of them?
The culture question is, let me take the culture one first. Jonah definitely leads up the culture more than I do in the company. And I think that we have tried to take an approach where we let the culture be organic as opposed to it being more like forced family fun, like the Griswolds or something like that. And I think that what we try to do is we let the BuzzFeeders kind of set the culture, and we try to provide the resources to make that happen,
So you're not going to have gaming arcades and pleasure rooms or whatever it is. In
Right,
the offices.
right. And we're not going to so I think that's, and we do a lot around that. We have outings, when we go to like medieval times or when we get traffic goals, people really wanted animals to come visit the office. So I was able to get animals to visit the office, right? at BuzzFeed Brews, we've done, which is our every other Thursday all hands. We've experimented with format where we've had speakers and then anonymous questions through this thing called Google Moderator, and then more of a free-flowing thing. And last week, we did one, and it was more free-flowing Q&A with lots of joking around. And
that's on a weekly basis?
Every other Thursday.
Every other.
And Jonah said to me, people really loved that one. That was people's favorite one. So we looked up to him afterwards and said they really liked that one. I was like, wow, that one really had a few substantive things in it, but it was so much more like light banter. And if that's what people want to do, and that's how people want to kind of, huddle up in a given week, and there's some stuff they want to have a lot of kind of like joking around and stuff like that, then I think that's great. So I think that we try to take a light hand to culture.
Thanks. And the second question?
Let's just talk about that one afterwards. I want to talk about it.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right. I think
All right,
this
question.
Go ahead.
I often come to your site and the content is so golden that even though you have 3 different commenting sections, you haven't nailed quality commenting. And nobody has, I don't know nobody, but it's still out there. And I expect you guys to, so are there any ideas you want to share with us? First part? Second part is the first BuzzFeed article I ever shared was 2 days ago with Settlers of Catan.
Oh, how to piss off everybody in Settlers of Catan?
Yeah.
So,
And I listed the numbers that I felt were just good strategy.
we have commented, we have the reaction buttons. With that said, I think the conversation happens on Facebook and Twitter. I think that's what it was. I think there was a lot of tweets and a lot of Facebook. I mean, a lot of people were like, where did you share?
Just
Facebook?
commenting with strangers doesn't work. Comment with your circle on Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, so there going to be an argument that, should we completely yank out the comments? I mean, to me, rather than like fixing them down, that would be the more immediate solution. But you're right, it is a little. We do know that it's a little bit weird the way the comments are.
I think on that,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.